humanity and politics. We'd like to welcome you all. Protocols is observed. We'd like to welcome the panelists. We'd like to welcome Ms. Horia Mashhour, former Minister of Human Rights, Mr. Ali Hazazi, Chairman of the Human Department at the Presidency, and Mr. Abdurrahman Barman, the CEO, Executive Director of American Justice Center, and Ms. Asma Rai, on behalf of Ms. Amat Salam Al Haj, would like to welcome you all in this seminar. On 11th March, the negotiation, this March, 11th March, the negotiation of abductees and prisoners start between the government and the Houthis. This will be concluded to these negotiations. All has great hopes on these negotiations and very optimistic, and particularly the families of the abductees and the detainees who has been detained and abducted for a long time. What is behind this optimistic? Maybe some statements by Mr. Majid Fadail and Abdul Qadir Murtada before starting the negotiation that this a very decisive round of discussion and dialogue, and the government is very keen to end the sufferings of the abductees and detainees. Also, one of the reasons is the Saudi-Irani proximity or this recent deal. So, what is the relation of this recent deal between Saudi and Iran? With what is it related? How is it related to the file of the abductees and detainees? And this this very argumentative relationship between humanity and humanitarian issues and politics. Ms. Asma Haj could not join us because for some she is not feeling well. So Ms. Asma Rai, the director of the Women's Abductee Office in Taj, on behalf of Ms. Amat Salam Al Haj, the chairperson of the Mothers of Abductee. Ms. Asma, the floor is yours.
عفوا ممكن أعرف اسمها؟ sorry unmute.
And the situation has deteriorated because these different parties involved in the violations committed against abductees and detainees, which created such bitter and very unfavorable conditions under which many thousands of Yemeni households and families are facing without any kind of supervision on the detention centers and the absence of the law on supervising the, as I said, detention centers according to Yemeni law. Why these parties started detaining civilians from their houses or from workplaces simply because they are opposing to their politics or participating in their right in freedom of expression. These civilians were exposed to long periods, long terms of enforced disappearance at detention centers, secret detention centers, while the minimum standard of rights does not exist, or the minimum standards of detention and prisons, and they have been received different forms of physical and psychological torture to force them to admit or to confess against themselves. years after detention, arbitrary detention and disappearance and torture, tens of detainees were brought before courts under allegation of intelligence with the Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia and UAE, and received death sentence. Most of them, despite this this trial just lacks the minimum standard of fair trials. However, we followed up all these cases and submitted our so the legal support to detainees with lawyers to attend their trials in order to ensure the authority or the rule of law and to ensure the presence of law at such instances, considering the ongoing situation of our country. Despite these rules, or some who were acquitted and were ordered to be released, however, Houthis group refused to release them and ordered to include them in the blacklist. So, including who were sentenced for years and who were in order to be released without any charge raised against them. Apart from the confession, they have been forced to confess under torture. The abductees civilians will be released only provided that to be exchanged by the other prisoners with the combatant prisoners with the legitimate government, and such abductee will be forced to move into other areas under legitimate government control. He has not the right to come back to his place, to his city. This is forced displacement. For instance, in 2022 April, the specialized penal court ordered with death sentence to 4 abducted journalists and ordered to release their other colleagues, Hisham Tarmoum, Insan Balghaif, Hisham Al-Yusufi, Hassan Annab, and Haytham Shihab, who spent for more than 5 years in prison with Houthis group. Their families also were requested to pay financial guarantees in order to release them. These families worked hard to provide such financial guarantees to such cases, and that cost them hundreds of thousands of Yemeni riyals. And after preparing all this amount of money, Houthis refused to release them and included their names among the exchange list under the UN sponsorship in 15 October 2020. And many others like them who were being ordered to be released, but unfortunately the release ruling were not implemented, where the Houthis group put it as a precondition to exchange them with imprisoned combatant with the legitimate government. The Women's League requested repeatedly to separate the civilians detainees from the combatant and warned that adopting the exchange of civilians as the only possibility to release them, warned against that. So now the major challenge now is what you are facing now, that under such conditions, we are going to call on the need to apply the Constitution provisions and national and local law, and to ensure the international humanitarian law and international law for human rights is respected and observed. Under such negotiations, which we hope they will agree into a very decisive or final resolution to solve the abductees issue, and also any agreement should not ensure the impunity for the perpetrators of the violations against victims. We'd like to explain here that any agreement or any deal that disregard the violations and torture against our abductees should not be approved, and also to ensure to be held accountable and under litigation. We should leave the chance for the justice to perform its role to ensure reaching into comprehensive peace, and no justice without peace, no peace without justice. We as organization also, human rights organizations, we are responsible to document the testimony of the victims and to cooperate with the international inquiry commissions to ensure the reparation, compensation, and justice for the abductees and the detainees, and to provide them and to compensate them for the financial and physical damage they encountered. We at the Mothers of Abductee League, we are working for years to mobilize international efforts and national efforts to release all the detainees that arbitrarily detained and arbitrarily disappeared, and to end their sufferings and the sufferings of their families, and to ensure accountability, justice on these gross violations committed against them. Justice and accountability are the pillars to address impunity and to return our sons. Also to ensure the rule of law and to ensure social peace in the country. Thank you for this seminar. I hope you reach into the number of recommendations and to ensure reaching into solutions for the abductees. Also, we hope that we hope you will stand beside us in our struggle in defending the human rights and to ensure peace in Yemen. And thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Asma Al-Rai, Director of our League Office in Ties, to stress or to set the challenges that we are facing and to ensure the rule of law, and even in light of this under ongoing circumstances and conditions, and to work that no peace deal will lead into to overcome the accountability responsibility of the perpetrators of human rights violations, and to document the victims' testimony to ensure accountability, and that the perpetrators and the abductees will receive the adequate compensation and reparation. Thank you, Ms. Asma. We'll move to Ms. Horia Bashour and her work and bear out the consequences of politicizing the abductees case. Ms. Horia, the floor is yours. Peace be upon you. Thank you for hosting me. I would like to salute all the mothers of abductee organization which is always present to defend the abductees and those who be under forced disappearance who are suffering greatly under torture. In fact, I wanted to congratulate the Mothers of Abductee organization and or league, and that the negotiation team will this time reach into agreement to release all the detainees, and tomorrow will be a real celebration for the Mothers of Abductee tomorrow. I hope this will will happen tomorrow. With the holy month of Ramadan, we are receiving this month, spiritual month, which for us as Muslims, hoping that the families will be united in this holy month, and this will be a great success in Switzerland, and to release all the detainees. Releasing of the detainees in change of prisoners of war is unfair deal, but to agree, however, to do that because they are civilians. They did not carry weapons. They were not in the combat zone or did any incriminated acts. However, if the parts of the war, they're treating them as prisoners of war and change in exchange of it will be released or in exchange of these civilians as human rights activists. However, it's okay if this will lead to release the civilians. And you know the fact, however, since the Stockholm Agreement, unfortunately, the United Nations, despite this is our major issue in Stockholm in 2018, in December 2018, one of the most important files what the objectives. However, the UN envoy office, I'd like to salute the UN envoy office here for being, I hope she's with us to listen to the human rights defenders' feedback and to the mothers of the Keys League feedback also. So as this file will be always present and the top of the priority of UN agenda, because since some agreement, no progress has been, very slight progress achieved since then. One batch has been released of detainees under the ICRC and contributed also in transporting them. I wonder if there's any other batch released or any following subsequent programs to rehabilitate them. I have no idea. However, this was the only step, the only intervention by the UN envoy office. However, the local mediators, they have achieved great successes at different instances in Taiz, in Marib, and in many cities. They managed to exchange some prisoners, abductees, and they are doing some other job during these disputes over water, for instance, or other disputes, community disputes. So local mediation has succeeded, and the mothers of the also succeeded in opening new communication channels with local mediators and of the exchange of dead bodies also. At such, so not to leave their dead bodies to be followed as stray dogs. So they did a great job. In fact, the local mediators also, the UN envoy office should take into account this also. They should pay attention to the local mediators because they are in the field, not noticing that they know better the ongoing circumstances in the many community, society, and the traditional and tribal norms through which they are reconciling between different parties and succeeded most of the time. I wish that the mothers of the Keys also league but should have participated in any events related to the objectives. For instance, if now we're present in Bern, in Switzerland, they could be very useful for them to communicate their feedback even as observer, if not to sit directly in the negotiation table, but at least as observers, they should have participated in this dialogue, in these negotiations. However, I hope that also that the mothers of the league will be empowered at different ways. First of all, I would like to say that all the participants today, most participants, I can see them today, and this webinar, in fact, they're contributing in some way or another. For instance, Mr. Ali Hazazi in the President's office, in the Human Rights Department. This is really great to have him with us. We have also Deputy Minister of Media, Dr. Mohammed Qaizan, to shed lights on this humanitarian issue. As you said, it is not only political issue, but the conflict, the ongoing conflict, armed conflict that involved them in this involved this humanitarian issue into this political issue. Also, Mr. Al Faqih, in fact, Mr. Yusuf Aburas, I personally, me and Yusuf Aburas, in Geneva and different human rights sessions, Human Rights Council, we met different special rapporteurs about detainees. We met special rapporteurs about torture, combating torture, etc. And we raised this issue several times to keep it on top of the agenda. We hope that we reach into community free of political prisoners, a community where the detainees were not subject to torture on for cases to follow the legal procedures, the arrest, detention, etc. Even the prisoner of war has rights, and prisoners has detainees has rights also until he gets attending the trials. All these procedures will be under law. Talking about the law, however, but now unfortunately now we this country is not functional. It's not under the rule of law. Unfortunately, it is split, very weak. The government cannot do its duties. Mr. Abdurrahman Berman also. He is a lawyer, very active lawyer in this area. He was a member of the Independent Commission for Investigation of Human Rights Violations. Now he is a chairman of American Center for Justice. He worked directly in this file. So I believe that also there's so many issues that reach to the Independent Inquiry Commission. The question here to the Independent Inquiry Commission, what did they do about this file? Did they refer them to the judiciary against those who, the perpetrators of torture, for instance, or to follow up to release them? Because as legitimate government also areas, there is some detainees also. For instance, Ahmed Maher, in one of the cases, they detained journalist Ahmed Maher. It is now, this case is very on top of the agenda. I can say that there is some activity as individuals or through different organizations. We did work in this file. We work on these different issues, but also the international community need, particularly the UN Envoy Office, should assume their role and mandate in this file. And in fact, now they are following up in Switzerland, and what is going on in Switzerland, and it should be under the sponsorship of the United Nations and the ICRC, etc. I think that, however, this news we received now, according to Mr. Majid Fadail, Deputy Minister of Human Rights, according to the statement he made, that they have achieved some success in releasing 880 detainees and prisoners in this recent deal, being first phase, all the way to reach the phase of all for all. This will be great, in fact, if it is true. Also, all the way towards sustaining the truce and to ensure ceasefire, long-term ceasefire, and ultimately, especially after the Saudi-Iranian deal, which under sponsored by China, and to achieve more success in the humanitarian and human rights field. I would like to stress that some people have been employed just because they wrote a tweet about another an activist or human rights defender or journalist. Simply have been detained for just writing a tweet. Recently, hopefully to be true, that the journalists who were sentenced to death arbitrarily also will be part of this first batch. This is really good, great news and great success if it's true. Also, the politicians whose name were mentioned in the Security Council resolution to release them, Brigadier Nasser Mansour, Brigadier Subayhi Faisal Rajab. We have to see Mr. Muhammad Qahtan, also one of the politicians. We hope that to see him within this list. He's the man of peace, a man of dialogue. Unfortunately, have been abducted arbitrarily and has been under enforced disappearance, and he's incommunicado by his family. No information about him. In all cases, I believe that hopefully we'll reach into peace, because there is no way out of this disastrous situation. Only in this inhuman situation, only go to peace, a fair peace, comparative peace for all. I hope that at any form of peace, this case should be present. This abductees should be present to be rehabilitated as well, not to release only, to be rehabilitated. Because there are some consequences of the detention. So this should be addressed in a very comprehensive approach. And this file, as I said, to be present at any future peace deal. And through normal blind transitional justice also could address this file, compensation, reparation, etc. Many other things could be to also to reform the institutions which were involved in such violations. This is a very essential issue and need to be materialized at any future peace deal. This could not be ignored. Otherwise, I don't expect that this such peace will be fragile. Such peace will not be sustained without addressing the root causes that led to the war and the conflict. I'm not going to take much of the time. I'd like to thank you. I'm going to listen a while. I have another commitment after that. I have to excuse myself, but I'll continue with this for some time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Huria. We're very happy to host you in this webinar. I'd like to stress some points that I've mentioned, Ms. Huria. You called the UN Envoy Office to take advantage of the local mediators and to that Mothers of the Key League to be among the participants in the different negotiations in Geneva as an observer. Also, Ms. Huria called for that one of the international justice to reform the legal and security institutions and reparation and compensation according to the mechanism of transitional justice. We'll move now to Mr. Ali Hazazi, the Director of Human Rights Department and the President's Office, is going to talk about the leading to the negotiations and political solutions for the abductees case. Before starting with Ms. Hazazi, I would like to listen to Mr. Salih Aswal. He's one of the local mediators. Asma, please open the mic for Sheikh Salih Al-Aswal. He's one of the local mediators to share with us his experience. Mr. Salih is one of the local mediators in the negotiations to release detainees and abductees. In the name of Allah, the merciful, compassionate. Praise and blessing be upon Allah. Thank you so much, the mothers of the Key, for their role in this issue, and which is witnessed by all. Me have been in contact with the League to address different cases of the abductees. Now the national local mediators team, the chairman of the local mediator team. This team has members of the team are 13 members, and as Ms. Huria said, that some are trying to isolate or ignore the role of local mediation. The local mediation during the past period managed to release more than 10,000 detainees and prisoners and to return more than 3,000 dead. This role is not under the media focus to benefit from the role of the local mediators. The Yemenis are one who suffer from this humanitarian file. And we met before with we should not inform them that they should not ignore the role of the local mediation. Till before 3 days, the negotiators are calling us to send them lists of the names of the detainees and prisoners. We told them before that we are very aware of the root causes of the conflict between the parties. It could be solved, and we propose that to release all for all. There is some attempts to ignore the abductees and to dialogue and the negotiation to be about the prisoner of war only. But we insisted that they should not be isolated, should not be, because they are the most suffering category, have been detained for long period also, and they have been under many violations and received baseless rulings by the or verdicts by the. We met with the committee in Sana'a. We told them that enough is enough of abducting civilians. You should stop that, and to refer the detainees to the courts. If the people that benefit from our role and shed light on that, and the benefits United Nations sponsored negotiations, they could have reached the solutions. We managed to release 8 of those who were sentenced to death. We managed to release them. all this is just politicized rulings, and we call different parties and the legitimate government and others that the detainees should be the major concern in the negotiations because they're the most suffering group. It doesn't mean that we are ignoring the other prisoners of war. The exchanges we made, as Miss the lady from the Mothers of the Fees League, the exchange we made, mainly we exchanged detainees with prisoners of war. Before these negotiations, they neglected the detainees, even to give prisoner of war in exchange of that. There are still 700 detainees in Marib who were ignored also. Nobody's talking about them. Some of us not talking about them. So in this context, we should shed light on this issue. The recent negotiations, we came up with a proposal that each party should release 100 by 100, and we do have the names. We have the full information about the names requested by different parties, including Mohammed Qahtan, Faisal Rajab, and those were sentenced to death, the 4 journalists who were under death sentence, who were under trumped up charges on criminal cases, which is false. Also, the other party to push also to release the detainees imprisoned. Also requested that to activate the role of the local mediators. Unfortunately, they're not paying attention. Since 2016, we are in the field, we're doing our job relentlessly. However, such role is underestimated. Most of the negotiations now, as we said before, they depend on the local negotiations. However, the United Nations sponsored negotiations that delayed this process for 8 months now. We stopped the first 1 full year. We stopped our local deals in Jordan. Also, we stopped for 7 months, and now 8 months we stopped because of this international. Because under the pretext that there is United Nations sponsored negotiations. Now, because we are doing with different parties, each party has their own agenda. We talked to Ma'in Sharim, with that said we agree that we're going to confront different parties who claim that they do not have these such prisoners or such detainees. We do have information, we can confront them. Unfortunately, they are not responding to local mediators, unfortunately. Mothers of the Tea League also, their role is underestimated. If you continue in such way, will this category will face injustice. We should ensure that exchange will be all for all. We also do have information that some were prisoners of war. They claim to be prisoners of war, but they are dead body. We told them that already, we know them that they are already dead. We do have the names. Some of the parties still requesting that they are still prisoners of war. Everything is documented by our side. The disappeared people, we do have information. We can argue about that. However, the problem is that the voice of local mediators is always ignored. Mr. Saleh, now we are calling for the exchange. Now we as human rights organization and other organizations says that this exchange is doing injustice to those detainees, civilian detainees, and their name should not be included among the exchange lists. Otherwise, they should be requested to be released without conditions because they are civilian abductees, has nothing to do with the war or the ongoing conflict with different parties. This is a principle, our principle as a league and as human rights organization. We'll move now to Mr. Ali Hazazi in his paper, which is about reading the negotiations and political solutions for the abductees issue. Mr. Hazazi, the floor is yours. Peace and blessing be upon you. Good evening. In fact, the abductees is a major concern, and it is a humanitarian case which is remain life even after the release of all the abductees, and first of all, they disappeared because it's a kind of extended crime. First of all, we do appreciate the efforts made by all parties, the mediators, government, human rights organizations, journalists, and they're raising this issue always and talking about these violations against the abductees, academia, among academia, journalists, politicians, and other civilians from different components of life. I would like we're talking now about this issue. I would like first to raise some important determinants in handling this file, noting that one of the important humanitarian files. Since the beginning of this violation, I recall that when the 5 points were developed by Ismail Wald al-Sheikh that time, UN envoy that time, one of these cases was the abductees. The problem is that many mistakes have been committed and which is still continuing. It is one of the mistakes that has not been corrected till date. That is now reading. I was reading about news that talking about prisoners of war, describing those who are going to be released as prisoners of war. Unfortunately, even the media, the pro-government media outlets, they're circulating this terminology without considering the legal international law provisions and local law provisions. But the international law describing the prisoners of war is always only within international conflict. The conflict under international law are internal or external orientation, national or international or non-international conflicts that are between the state and other state, the international group, but this this is non or the conflict in Yemen is non-international as described by the ICRC, and the United Nations described it as a non-international conflict with the all that each one is taken by Houthis is considered a rebellion against the state, is not be defined as war of prison of war, and the legitimate government can put him under trial and take only legal procedures for participating with outlawed militia or rebellion group. So this is the mistake committed by the United Nations at that time. As the Minister at that time was Minister of Human Rights and Media Information. Minister of Justice at that time, Khalid Bajunaid was Minister of Justice at the time. And nonetheless, this mistake has been ignored. Some methodological mistake has been committed in this regard to international law. Also, the media handling of this issue, press and TV, that has been handling them or dealing with them as prisoners of war, which is one of the issues. Last meeting, I have had this interview in December with the Radwa in the UN Envoy Office. We discussed this issue. Also, another problem is that I do agree with what has been said by Mothers of the Tea League about the civilians or those abductees and the issue of exchanging them. Uh, this exchange this exchange is outside the international law, even if under the sponsorship of the UN envoy or of the United Nations to Yemen. I would like to explain this very the legal framework about this issue. The envoy now of the United Nations can now form envoys for special cases or special countries to investigate specific cases or to send envoys. Those envoys in the international law are mediators or facilitators. For they are the reconciler who bring both parties together to reach into agreement. They are just a reconciler. But however, to commit legal mistakes when by the envoy or others who consider this part of the legal ignorance, prevalent ignorance. And the panel of experts sanction committee in 2021, it said clearly that Houthis consider the disappearance of these as hostages and exchange them in exchange to release their prisoners. This is a very wrong in the international law, and sanction should be carried on. The sanction committee is superior to the envoy because they are under the United Security Council, who has wider mandate than the Secretary General Office of Investigations. Difference between General Assembly and the Security Council in the legal status of the each resolution. However, this very important issue in the exchange, unfortunately, they involved in this committee, unfortunately, in also another, I'm talking about human rights activists and a person of law. Yeah, some issues about these issues. The UN envoy office, due to the political stalemate in the negotiations, in other files, economic, etc., unfortunately, they're trying hard to make any breakthrough on account of the victims themselves. This is very major issue. Unfortunately, if we review the previous deals, only one deal, 1,056 between two parties, which under the UN office and the ICRC. Most of the different deals, as the previous speaker, were by a local or mediators. Most of the deals, exchange deals, were made through the mediators. Houthis, they know the weak points and start dealing. Even the rulings, they consider them as judicial rules, which is not true. What they are issuing, however, according to law, what have been issued by the Houthis is not legal. As we said before, these are sham trials. We talk to the media at different instances, media or TV or whatever. We mentioned that these are killing orders. They are not rulings by courts. They invest on these ruling or orders to release their prisoners of war. For them, who Abdul Khalik, the journalists, they know of great importance to them, but just using them to exchange their combatant and to also to make it difficult or to receive more released prisoners of war. Today's deal, which is, as you follow the news today, 881 and 706 against 181. A very unfair deal. This is what Houthis want. Before, we're talking of the legal context, there's many crimes, multiple crimes. Even these deals under the UN sponsorship does not invalidate the violations and crimes and violations to the international law, international humanitarian law about protection of civilians according to the 4 Geneva Conventions, or about the conventions on the human rights and Universal Declaration and the Declaration of the Cultural, Civil Rights, etc., and some other attached conventions, which is part of the dealing with the abduction, like combating torture, agreement which consider the moral and physical torture, the other convention on the enforced disappearance. All these are crimes. Any negotiation through through the UN envoy office should not. This is not a legal procedures, and does not acquit Houthis from the crimes they have committed in the Yemeni constitution and the international human rights law. That these are the crimes of no status of limitation. even the future there is kind of reconciliation. They has no status of limitation because they are special rights for individuals who has the sole right. Also, using Houthis are using today this as bargaining chip. Also we go back to the legal responsibility of the international law. There is what we call the Fourth Geneva Convention, the common Article 3. According to this common Article 3, not the state only. We used to talk. We used to know. We know that the state only are committed to the international material law. No, even the militias and non-state actors in the international article law, the wars law or Geneva law, or Lahai law, this IHL, common Article 3 indicates that if there is any group, when the commander and badge, they are considered responsible under IHL for any violations and to be prosecuted and their leaders before national or international judicial system. As I said, this is the common Article 3, and also stressed, if you go back to the recent report issued before 1 month in February by the Sanction Committee, has referred to this part in particular and talked about the responsibility of Houthis militia about these violations. Unfortunately, the abductees file is one of the highly underestimated files despite these efforts, but also there is so many problems issues in dealing with such important file. It should have been a team should be formed, highly qualified team in the negotiation skills, and IHL to be formed of experts to deal with this issue. Also have an issue with the database, which is incomplete or not detailed. Each component has their own names and data, and this is one of the issues that need to be addressed in the future. It's one of the issues under the consideration of the Presidential Leadership Council. Humanizing this file, which is very important, and dealing with it and dealing with international human rights, humanitarian law, and the report should need to continue in escalating different campaigns to shed light on these violations. The Human Rights Council at each session need to be reminded and this issue about this issue. Also, the reports to be submitted to special procedures. Some brief reports that include humanitarian story, very technical reports, 5-page to 10-page report could be read, while a report of 100 pages might be ignored, be difficult to be read. And we know that now this changes in dealing with these different files. This file will be this is a very small deal, does not correspond to our aspirations in the government or among the CSOs or among activists, and will continue our demand to release all for all. And this is one of the files, and to make sure that to release all detainees and to distinguish between civilians and the combatant. Thank you, Ms. Ali Hazazi. Mr. Ali Hazazi. Major point I've mentioned in your statement is that conflict in Yemen is a non-international conflict. Therefore, the detainees are not prisoners of war. Also, exchange is not under the law, and it is very wrong and committed by a sanction committee. Also issuing the death sentences is to improve the negotiations conditions of the Houthis. Also stress that the rights of these victims has no status of limitation, and also to work to ensure their rights will be respected and to ensure accountability and justice for these victims, and to continue the perpetrators of these violations, compensation and reparation for the victims as well. You talked that one of the issues that as to ensure the humanitarian aspect of the file is to raise it at the Human Rights Council and to submit different reports. Thank you so much for your participation. Now to Mr. Abdurrahman Berman, who is going to talk about the role of human rights organizations to release the abductees. Mr. Abdurrahman, the CEO of American Center for Justice. Peace and blessing be upon you. Good evening. I would like to salute all the participants, wishing that these efforts will continue by the League and the civil society in advocating for the detainees and abductees and those under enforced disappearance. I would like to talk about the role of CSO's role in releasing the detainees and abductees. First of all, we should know that there is some laws and procedures and institutions that should take care and protect the human rights, the right, freedom, right to life, in movement, etc. All the violations committed today, there should be laws and institutions like judiciary and security should be responsible for protecting people from such violations. But because of the vulnerability of the state and such institutions and the collapse of the state, and during the war also, and the control of armed and groups and militia, the significance of civil society increased. Civil society does exist even in countries where there is freedom and rule of law, and institutions also are there. In the United States, for instance, more than 600,000 or maybe 1 million organizations, CSOs in the United States. In Japan, more than in 2008, there were about 600,000 organizations. For each Japanese, they have civil society organization. Although there is rule of law in these countries and respect for this law and order, and the violations are not that uh, serious as what is happening in our countries. Also, these institutions protect individuals even if without the existence of organizations, but they are there to continue monitoring the performance of different authorities and institutions. So the importance of having civil society, strong, vibrant civil society in the areas where the state is absent or vulnerable or under control of the armed militia will be more important. The significance of these institutions is in monitoring violations, documenting them, expose them, and publicize them to the public opinion, to issue different reports, advocate for the victims, also to prosecute the perpetrators of these violations as far as they can. In the different countries and regions. All these are part of the pressure on the perpetrators of these violations. We could also take some examples. Some might say that what the CS is doing is just as meaningless. It's meaningless. But if you consider some examples from other regions, like when great numbers of disappeared and there is under control of the CS Transitional Council, it is because of the campaigns of the civil society, including the Mother of the Keys League and some organization American Center for Justice, and other organizations, Trust Coalition. Many of organizations participated in these campaigns, and we have organized these campaigns in partnership with different CSOs. This led to 200 were referred, and when on overnight referred who were under enforced disappearance were referred to the Bir Ahmed prison and Al-Masura prison. Within days have been released first pass 660 persons. They were remained incommunicado. So the civil society achieved some achievements, and the pressure also exerted in these areas. In the also about the informal secret prisons. We remember that people were abducted to places which they don't know where they were about. Now more than 57 persons and were disappeared by the STC. I believe they might be died under they might have died under torture. Since 1 year we are following up this case. We have mediator close to the STC who told us that he sat with one of the colonels who told them that this is a big issue for us. Those people died. Most of them died. You told the country was hand over their dead bodies to their families. And for us, you don't know where are they because people who killed them also otherwise we might not have there would have been also thousands of people who were in these secret prisons without the role of the civil society. Also, on the other side, in Sana'a, in the women cases, we have seen how the civil society advocated for them. Many of them were under enforced disappearance and in secret prisons. And now all of a sudden they were resurfaced in the central jail. Many of them were released. Many of these issues were solved. Cases were solved. Still some female abductees are still under detention, but the civil society is achieving some achievements since March. This part is special for the abduction was Sultan Zabin. Now he is on the blacklist of the sanction list of the international panel of experts. His wanted person immediately after that Houthi declared that he died. In the recent report by the panel of experts, they were very skeptical about his death and this kind of trying to evade in the criminal responsibility or prosecution. I don't take much of your time. The civil society is waging a very severe, a genuine war in the country, in Yemen, with participation with the media. And the civil society used to resort to the judiciary in the past, uh, or the civil or the security services, or do some visits to the different detention centers and prisons. But today it is difficult for us in a very minimal level. Now, media is our also major role with the civil society to combat these violations, which are the severe are exposed to. In conclusion, I'd like to salute the spearhead of this struggle, the Mothers of the Tea League, which is struggling daily. We notice their continuous activities and also the mobilizing different families to claim the release of their sons, and also continuous event organized by the League in this war, this fierce war, this noble war, which ultimately they will succeed. Their determination will succeed over the determination or the will of the prison wardens. Thank you, Mr. Abdurrahman, the CEO of American Justice for Center. Some points that I have mentioned, that the the role of the human rights laws is to document violations and issue reports, advocate for the victims, and prosecute the perpetrators. All these are means of pressure by the CSOs. And media is a major partner, as I said, to the civil society in such endeavors, in such mission. You recall some two examples of the role of pressure exerted by civil society, like the National Center in Aden, led by the Security Belt or STC, and the role of civil society in exposing the whereabouts of these detainees and transferring to Al Mansoura and Bir Ahmed prison. Also, recognition that the deceased or disappeared persons, the 57 persons who might have died under torture exerted by the security services. Also, abduction of women in Sana'a. And we at the Mothers League, we they developed a report. This report, we talk about the abduction and detention of women and the detention condition in Central Jail in Sana'a, and the abduction which is going on in Sana'a under the soft war against women. I hope you go back to these reports. This type of advocating campaigns we do about the abduction of women. Thank you to the panelists in today's webinar, Ms. Horia Mashhour, Mr. Ahmed Ali Hazazi, Mr. Abdulrahman Barman, Ms. Asma Arra on behalf of Amat Salam. Now we'll open the floor for the Q&A. Kindly raise your hands or send text message to chat to open the mic for those who want to participate or raise questions. Yesterday, the league organized a sit-in which mothers talked about the violations committed in the intelligence and security apparatus. Yesterday, some women their husbands were detained. They've been transferred. There is Dr. Ali Arjash, Deputy Minister of Higher Education. Mr. Ali, the floor is yours. Thank you for the league and to you, Ms. Najla, for moderating this session, and to the panelists. In fact, this is a very important issue and timely issue now. I hope that some of the participants in the on the negotiations to participate in this webinar. I'd like to salute the league also for their efforts in and one of the first organizations that uh, followed this very serious issue. Second issue with that, I'd like to thank Mr. Al-Hazazi for this legal terminology and this legal definition. This should be brought about by the negotiation committee and to or prepare some files because we are dealing with militia, and one day we might go and bring them to trial. So we need complete files about these cases. I also like to thank the committee, which inside Mr. Saleh Al-Aswal, Sheikh Saleh Al-Aswal, for his thankful humanitarian efforts. They have achieved some successes. We deal with militia and this militia does not believe in human rights or freedom of individuals, liberty of individuals. They believe on their ideas only. Some might be might be abducted by someone on personal ground for to compromise with him or the militia today. Before a while in Amman negotiation, their team was asked about the prisoners of Hajur. About Hujur detainees and prisoners. and this gross violations, abduction, etc., abduction and detention of many people from Hajur, some of their civilians and others are combatant. The militia in Amman negotiations said that these abductees of Hajur, they stood against the state. They fought the state and their rebellions and against the state. They are not prisoners of war. Therefore, it is a right to put them under trial and to apply the law on them. In the recent negotiation in Geneva, they denied having these detainees. I said they have been released, with exception to some of them who were died by the airstrikes, killed by airstrike. This procrastination by Houthi should be taken into consideration. It's by armed militia. They never care about what they are doing. So hope this Hujur and Utma and other areas should be those who stood against the Houthis control. And in December 2017 in Sana'a as well. Thank you so much. Wish you all the success. Thank you, Dr. Ali. I'd like to point out that the League has addressed what happened, the violations in Hajur area, and it is a report on 2020 and 2019, and we mentioned that we talked those that under torture, like Mr. Yahya Nasser al-Namsha. This about Hujur area. If still someone interested, Mr. Sahashwal would like to talk here. Please, the floor is yours, Sheikh Saleh. The negotiations about detainees, we said before that detainees should not part of the negotiation, and they are dealing with illegitimate party. I'm in Sana'a. I'm a bit reserved about some case issues. The issue is that they cannot be released without this means. Even the legitimate government, we talk about them. We told them do not involve the detainees, but should be accompanied by some pressure to release all detainees. Now, the people from Ahmed have been following this case for 4 years. They have been under disappearance for 4 years. We managed to release one of them, one of the detainees, and I talked with him. I asked him about this name. He said they are there in the prison at such place. One of them is almost blind because of the detention. When we claim them, the Houthis issued death sentence against them. We talked to the Houthis and so on. I said, people, they have 6 years and they are now starting trying them. Why? Why don't you try them from the very beginning? And they are in the prison for 6 years. So we are doing our best. If we try to negotiate with them, we cannot. They don't accept to meet the prisoners. The role of League also should also adopt the detainees the other side in Marib to have more credibility in their endeavors. Otherwise, we'll be endorsed for one party. All detainees here and there. Also, they have the detainees in by Sana'a. Did not recognize. With should be coordination in this area with the national team also, considering their work in this field. Before even 5 years, we said that detainees should be linked to the prisoners of war, but no other way, no other means to release them. So we are forced to follow this path. also to release, we call to release all detainees without any condition. But after now 5 years, why referring them to courts? We managed to stop the arrests by Sana'a. We managed to stop more than 70 people who were referred to trial. Managed to release them to have been exchanged in Marib. And we managed to release them without any condition. And those who has some criminal charges should be referred to court. But after 6 years, you shouldn't have any charges. The delegates would try to find about the Muhammad Qahtan. Despite different proposals provided, we are trying our best and hopefully we succeed. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Sarkh Al-Asr. I'd like to point out, if you read our reports, you will find out that we are talking about detainees in Marib and Taiz and others detained by the legitimate government. We do talk about detainees in Aden, about detainees in Sana'a and other areas. We deal with these parties, all these parties from different, from one distance. Talking about violations in Taiz, Sana'a, Marib, Aden, in every area of the government, of the country. About the Mahwed detainee abductees, we are aware of the 3 abductees in Al Mahwed, Ismail Abul Ghaif, Abdul Aziz Al Aqili, and Saghir Fari'. They have been disappeared for 5 years and 6 months. Their family don't know nothing about their whereabouts. They believe that they died inside in the prisons. They appeared only after this long period of disappearance, when some abductees thought they found them in National Security Prison in Sarif. Then Houthis only allowed to expose their place and allowed their visitation. December last year, we learned that they've been sentenced to death under trumped up criminal charges after this long period of disappearance and torture. Mr. Ali Al-Faqih. Mr. Ali, thank you. I'd like only to comment, like to thank you, the role of the League for these efforts. Coinciding with this negotiation about the detainees and the prisoners of war, they need to be monitoring by the civil society organizations. The League should call number of concerned organizations and to form kind of operation room in line with the negotiation to follow up or to ensure monitoring over the and prepare different lists about the proceedings of the negotiations and the implementing mechanisms, because most of the negotiations were trembled because of some details. Also identifying the names who under these deals of exchange, we'll find that there's some names of detainees, particularly of the civilians. Some people were in detention for years, were the relatives of the influential or the leaders, or those people that's presence in media or those celebrities, or some geographical or political consideration. They were there in the exchange lists, and it's better to release them and receive their. Although we know we agree that releases for all, but the role of civil society is to follow up these issues and to have this monitoring, as I said, will ensure that all detainees' rights will be ensured, the civilian detainees to be released regardless of other consideration or some people have been in the detention for 8 years since 2015 for till date, many transactions deals have been concluded. Transaction or deals for release were concluded through different mediators or local community local mediators, but they were not released. They fall sick. Their families are suffering. Some cases which I'm aware of, the details, they are facing some humanitarian crisis. They lost their family members while in prison. So having this kind of monitor will ensure clear humanitarian standards in identifying the names and will ensure the success of the negotiations all the way to release without forcing people for displacement. Unfortunately, most of those have been released. The civilian abductees from Houthi prisons were forced to be displaced to the IRG control areas. So from prison and disappearance into expel or displacement. The other issue also to follow up the conditions of this release after the release. They have suffering from the consequences of their detention and imprisonment. They suffer from some psychological disorder, health issues, financial issues, and they lack any care or support. Very rare of them are cared for to ensure their treatment. So this organization can follow up and in coordination and provide and to support the released detainees after the release because they have been 7 or 8 years in the prison. They in bad health condition, psychologically and physically, and are not capable. They lack livelihood, source of livelihood. They cannot provide for their family, etc. Also, to these details need to be addressed. Need to be addressed by the CSOs. Also, to achieve results, they can achieve this more than government side, considering the poor role by the government. The civil society's role should be should be should exist here, and to ensure the support to all the released detainees. I'm happy this deal included release our journalists who have been for 8 years in prisons, suffering from different hardships. It is very, they'll be released. But they're not just trying to single out the journalists, but all this should be care and follow up should include all those who lack such support on all people who came from different areas who lack any political affiliation should receive the follow up and care they need. Thank you so much for your concern about this issue and for your efforts in general. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ali. We second your proposal to form kind of monitoring mechanism for civil society and to develop clear standard to release detainees according to which their detainees be released. We disagree with this way of releasing and displacement of the detainees and to be denied from going back to their hometown or businesses or family members. The league has been always refusing this deal, but the only way was the exchange to solve their problem and work always hoping that this to be solved according to the to law and the detainees to be released without any conditions. About the released detainees, The League, being a human rights organization with limited influence, is trying hard to support the released detainee. However, we still were striving to be compensated, the released detainee to be compensated for the sufferings they have encountered during their detention. Thank you all. Ms. Nabila Faro now. Ms. Nabila Faro, please go ahead. Peace and blessing be you. Thank the league and all the speaker who shows their concern about the detainees because they leave their sufferings. Thank you all. Second, are striving to reach the detainees. Mr. Saghir Farid and other detainees. I suffered that. My father also, while the suffering they are facing, has been detained for 7 years without knowing their whereabouts. We didn't know their whereabouts only after they received the verdict against the sentence that they received by my uncle. So I call upon all human rights activists and all those who call for humanity and the media want to exert my uncle also who received death sentence, who is still suffering, he cannot stand, cannot do anything. For 8 years, he has been imprisoned, has been in prison. So call upon you all and organizations to call for releasing my uncle. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nabila. We call to release Mr. Saghir Farf al-Mahwed, who sentenced to death in December for more than 5 years. I have to stop for a while. I cannot do translation for more than 1 hour and a half. Unfortunately, I have to take rest for like 5 minutes.
منظمة سياج. تفضلوا.